I'm Hope Cell, and I'm going to be talking about ways to cheat death. So I'm just going to be talking about my take on ranking the ways that we can cheat death. Death. It's always been like a fantasy for human race. Um, but I think there are a couple limitations. There's a couple controversial takes. First of all, is the ethics, economics, and philosophical implications, especially with like religion as well. But one conspiracy I believe is that like there's hidden elites that are living forever already. So I'm just gonna go from like just gonna go over like top common ways that like sci-fi has deemed and like what is biologically feasible for um pretty much cheating death. So let's see. Yeah, I think biology is definitely a limitation, but economics I think is the reason why it has to be so nuanced and like I mean, there's a lot of ethical concerns when it comes to like doing research, anyways, regarding these things. Like, but this is also a controversial take. But like when I was younger, I wanted to do like mad scientists, kind of like sci-fi scientists, like where they get to do like crazy experiments on humans and like try to you know get immortality or something like that. And that's why I wanted to be a scientist. But like clearly, there's ethics that limit even the most basic studies and experiments. But so we know that there's a lot of aging research and how we can extend telomeres, and that can pretty much reverse or technically extend our lifespan. Um, there's also like um, physical organs like skin and stuff like that where we can reverse aging or extend um, longevity and youth. The problem is that if we publicly achieve a level of significant life extension, the problem is that we're going to be crashing our economy, or we're going to have a alternative economic paradigm where resources is interpreted differently and utilized differently. So that's definitely a big consideration. Um, Assuming that our current economy with um, capitalism. But I'm gonna just start from like the least likely. So on TV we have seen like RoboCop, where we like transplant or like replicate bodies or put it in like robotics. I think that's the least likely. Biologically, it just doesn't make sense. Like the technology to get there, there's definitely more efficient ways. Growing new bodies is, I think it's very doable, but I think it deviates from the true purpose, and it's a little bit, yeah, it's not efficacious. I think it just kind of defeats the purpose. But there has been replicated and transplanted bodies and stuff like that, so it might seem the most viable, but I think it's actually, in terms of like a global adoption, I think it's the least likely. Number two, um, consciousness transplanting. This is also a common um, interpretation of how to achieve a different level of lifestyle or consciousness. I think it's coined, commonly phrased as brain in a vat or something like that. Um, there's no I mean we can't even comprehend what kind of vessel can host a a functional brain long term. So I mean, though we do have the beginning steps with like Neuralink and understanding um, neural imaging and interface technology, it's still very, very new. I think instead of this expanding, I think and like evolving into consciousness transplanting, I think it would be more likely it would deviate into an alternative, more effective um, method. Next, uploading your consciousness to a cloud. I think this is a little bit more feasible, where it could kind of deviate into this, where like we could actually transmute and impute our consciousness into a digital cloud, because mapping of the brain is with neurons is theoretically possible. But the problem is, um, how do we don't even understand what consciousness is. So like this would lack like ingenuity of understanding how consciousness and um, humanity and life is interpreted. So this is more like up to a philosophical um, interpretation of what is the consciousness, and so this is kind of like the ethical like gray area where like and philosophical part. But yeah, this would make like starting from here, I think it's more viable and like realistic, and I think it considers more realistic um, factors like economics and how it's going to change um, structures and future lifestyles and societies. Next, it's slowing down age significantly. So this, I think, some from here, this is like in the more conventional sense, it's already being um, attempted. I think slowing down longevity is very, very possible. I think with biomarkers, like I personally believe that with monitoring biomarkers and trying to optimize that, it's easy to extend our lifespan. In terms of like longevity and like health, I don't know if that's directly translated or directly correlated, but like we know there are a lot of statins or anti-aging drugs and supplements that we can use for specific targeted things. And if we eliminate the highest risk of death, like cardiovascular death and like cancer, I think it's I think it's more of like extending our lifespan to maximum utility. Um, yeah, I think if we were to eradicate all early death, I think the average lifespan will be closer to above 100 years, and that's pretty significant increase in lifespan. Of course, that is not like as fantasy or like audacious as immortality or like living you know close to immortality, like 1,000 years in relative to the 80 average is like 80. And to kind of go off of that, like it's not only just 80 years that we're living, but like we actively only get to choose to live like 30% of our lives. We have like 6 to 7 hours or 6 to 8 hours on average per person to be healthy, to be taken up by sleep. And then we have to work, you know, average 2,000 hours a year from, an average age of like 18 to like 67. It's like 45 years. Wait, something like that. Um, and work just to survive. And then we have to consider all these other factors like, you know, we have to spend time eating and we have to spend time like taking care of ourselves. And like ultimately you're left with like a very small percentage of life that you actually get to live. But like I'm gonna talk to I'm gonna have another video dedicated on like, you know, another realistic way and how to extend your lifespan, because technically if you can um get rid of like sleep, for example, 1/3 of your lifespan is increased. So instead of like or 1/3 of your lifespan is not taken up by your life. So if you were expected to live 90 years, that's 30 years of your life. That means instead of living 60 years, that's like 50% increase of your lifespan. So that's a significant factor by just removing one large, which is also like infallible. Like it just we don't understand enough of the brain and why we sleep. So like that's still very fantasy, still very unrealistic. But I think with number four, like or like significantly delaying our aging process with like very high monitoring biomarkers and like optimizing with drugs, I think is very viable. And given that, I feel like with modern medicine and technology, like there are probably people who are living beyond the like I think that I mean that's one of the not controversies. One of the conspiracies that I believe that like there are hidden elites that are living forever. or like have been living, like 200 years or something like that. Not forever for sure, but yeah, I think that's very viable. Like extending our lifespan to like 200 is not out of the ordinary. I think with like a couple of scientists and doctors, I think that's you can easily monitor and extend your lifespan at least to that point. Um, I think it really comes to the matter. It really comes to like how your cognitive um and your brain really declines. So that's probably the limitation currently. But in terms of like common death, like heart attack and stuff like that,